you haven't noticed, by the way, there are lots of pictures being taken, so I have assumed everybody is okay with, as we say, whatever happens in Wanker Monday will probably end up on Facebook somewhere.
So if you disapprove of us taking pictures, please say now.
Was that disapproval, or was that you just...
So that we do not fall foul?
Yes, anyway. So, I am a little bit, as with Michael, I'm going to introduce Karl without an introduction, because you're going to do it, aren't you? So, everybody welcome Karl.
I'm glad you brought me in before I came on, to be fair, because that just makes it a little bit easier. First things first is power and vulnerability, so I will let you know I'm a bit nervous, so if I babble on, I apologise in advance.
Keep you in check, mate.
No problemo. Right, so, yeah, that's me, Karl W. Newton Photography. I'll start with a quote. A photographer must possess and retain the receptive faculties of a child who watches the world for the first time. Quite like that quote. It kind of sums up a lot of what I do. When I've got my camera out, I look at things with a new light and a new angle, and I'm observing a lot more, so that kind of rings very true. And I'm going to try to, if the sound works, play you a video clip that I usually listen to first thing in the morning and last thing at night. Don't know how much relevance it has to my presentation, but it's quite
never plays the gallery. I think that you never learn it until much later on. But never work for other people in what you do. Always remember that the reason that you initially started working was that there was something inside yourself that you felt that if you could manifest it in some way, you would understand more about yourself and how you coexist with the rest of society. And I think it's terribly dangerous for an artist to fulfill other people's expectations. I think they generally produce their worst work when they do that. And if the other thing I would say is that if you feel safe in the area that you're working in, you're not working in the right area, always go a little further into the water than you feel you're capable of being. Go a little bit out of your depth, and when you don't feel that your feet are quite touching the bottom, you're just about in the right place to do something exciting.
Yeah, I find that quote quite inspiring, and it kind of eggs me on at times to do a lot of things that maybe ordinarily I wouldn't do in my own insecure way. An example being, about a month ago, an opportunity came up via email to go to Pride in London on a media pass alongside like renowned journalists and all sorts. And there was a little bit of me on the way down to London that was thinking, bloody hell, I'm blagging this. I don't know quite how I'm going to hold my head with these renowned journalists, but I did it anyway, and the results were really good, so it kind of paid off, and it's probably thanks to that video clip. So, when did I begin doing photography and why? I've always done photography on point and shoot cameras, camera phones, all that kind of stuff. But I think the first time I ever dedicatedly did it was about 10 years ago. I lived in Lancaster and Morecambe, and this was before, maybe longer than 10 years, maybe 15 years. This was before the days of social media. So I come from like Acott's Green, which is very estate-like, and I'm coming back to visit family, and I'm telling them about how beautiful Lancaster and Morecambe is, and they just can't fathom my words. So I decided to get a camera at that point and kind of start documenting it and photoing it, Morecambe Bay, Lancashire, countryside, all that kind of stuff, and then I could actually print the photos and bring them back and show them, and that's kind of where the journey began. It did get a little bit lost along the way after that, because I had days in addiction and stuff like that, and money was scarce, so cameras always got sold, and I was never really worried about anything other than my daily existence, as shallow as it was. But then in my recovery, I kind of had a load of time to myself, because for all its flaws, addiction's quite a time-consuming hobby. So I kind of had a massive amount of time, and I needed to find a hobby and an outlet and something to do with that time. And I kind of picked a camera back up and got into it, and I've run with it ever since, and it seems to be going rather well. So that would be about 2016, 2017, I reckon, and since then it's kind of gone from there to just massively blows up by the day. Opportunities keep coming up, things keep happening, and I'm just absolutely running with it at the moment. And hoping it doesn't stop. So here's a question for some of you. What makes a good photograph in your opinion? Any answers?
Story behind it.
Yeah.
Story that is told.
So a bit of narrative, yeah?
Spontaneous.
Yeah?
Composition as well.
Yeah, yeah. It plays a part, doesn't it? Yeah, it's got to be kind on the eye. Anyone?
Get the reaction.
Yeah. Thought evoking, comment evoking, yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
You enjoy it?
Yeah, yeah. And must admit that plays a part in my editing. I have to look at the photo and feel something for me to actually then want to put it out so well. So definitely, yeah. Any advances on that?
When that reader's parts, but you can't get back.
Yeah, absolutely. Freezing time. It's a bit of a superpower that I like to have. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Seeing things that other people might want to see.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. So spotting the unordinary maybe and the less obvious thing in a frame, yeah. Any advances? They're all good.
Storytelling.
Yeah, storytelling, absolutely. Okay, so one thing I've learned in photography is there's kind of a divide with myself. There's a divide between conventional things that you'll maybe get taught or recommended, like leading lines, rule of thirds, all that kind of stuff, coloured tones. But then there's my own opinion, and it kind of, you guys are kind of echoing that. I like a bit of narrative. I like it if a moment's candid. Colours are quite appealing as well. I like good composition to a point. Sometimes I'm a little unconventional in my compositions, but at the same time they kind of work in their own unique way. So yeah, I think the biggest thing is like someone said, yeah, someone's going to be able to look at it and feel something or have a question. I always like to have a question like, what's gone on just before that moment? What's going to happen next? What's going on there with some of the photos? You know, what's the story? So yeah, it's got to be something you maybe look at 2, 3, maybe endless times and pull you back in every single time, in my opinion. And that's just my opinion, there's many of them, so but that's my personal one. My style kind of ties into that, yeah. I like to go for candid moments. I like to photograph people, anything with people. I've done everything from shooting with models to street photography to event photography. I went to the Donald Trump protest the other month. That was interesting, very interesting. I've done London and Birmingham Pride. All sorts of things. As long as it involves people in some sense, I will genuinely get the camera out because I love to read people, emotions, gestures, moments, stuff that's going on. That's kind of where my love of photography sits. A little bit about some of the photographers that inspire me. So the first one would be David Bailey. I don't do much dedicated studio work, so it's maybe not an obvious choice in that sense, but I kind of like the fact that if you ever get to see him talk or hear him talk, he's an hilarious guy. He's so funny, and you can kind of imagine that some of the expressions he gets out of people is with his humour from behind the camera, and it's just simple. It's just a white backdrop and the subject, and it just works in that sense. The next one's a guy called David LaChapelle, and he does some, I want to almost say what I'd imagine Warhol doing if he was around this day and he was into modern digital art. It's kind of somewhat political, somewhat arty, somewhat unconventional, but it's interesting work as well. Don't worry if you can't see all these pictures clearly. I'll be forwarding the slides to Tim afterwards and we'll send them out and stuff. The next one's Art Wolf. He does a lot of travel and wildlife photography, and I particularly like the colour ranges that he uses. I find them very appealing colour wise, and they're kind of a real treat for the eye. Then we've got Gregory Crewdson. I like Gregory because there's part of me that likes to direct scenes. I've done some work with Peaky Blinder reenactors recently, and for some reason I love directing them in scenes and setting scenes up, and I kind of like that he does that as well, and that there's almost a graphic novel look to some of his work, which is very interesting, and the colours and the lighting are particularly interesting. They always give me that bit of narrative as well, like with the one in the bottom right, I'm looking at it and I'm just wondering what on earth's going on there. It looks like an unhappy marriage, they maybe just I don't know, there's all sorts of stories, especially the one in the top left as well, that ties into my love of sci-fi quite a bit. We've then got the man Henri, one of the early innovators of street photography, using a method he called the decisive moment. So doing street photography myself, I can't imagine how long he probably waited for either of those photos to happen. If it's anything like me, I could stay on the spot for 3-4 hours quite happily. If I've got an idea in my mind and I want a shot, I will sit it out and I will wait for that shot. And yeah, that's definitely something he was into. Had he took maybe the photo on the left 10 seconds earlier or 10 seconds later, it wouldn't work the same at all. And a lady called Vivian Meyer, who's probably my all-time favourite, even though she probably never intended to be. It's quite. Do any of you know the Vivian Meyer story? Yeah, fascinating story. She was a nanny by trade, and all she used to do after she dropped the kids off at school was wander around the streets and do a film on camera a day, and never showed a soul, never showed anyone. Locked them away in the storage unit. It was only in old age, when she became hard on money, that the storage unit got sold, like you see on Storage Hunters, and people discovered the photography, and she's since died. And it's now, I think I've read somewhere, some of her prints in America are going for silly money, like 10-20 grand a time. It's just unbelievable that she never wanted to show us all, because it's some of the best street photography you'll ever see. And there's still more coming out by the day. There's thousands of, as you can imagine, shooting a roll of film a day, there's hundreds, thousands of photos. And then a guy called Liam Wong, who I was fortunate enough to meet the other month actually. He was down in Birmingham for, I think it was Flatpack. Another fascinating story actually. He started his career as a game programmer at Ubisoft, worked on games like Far Cry, Assassin's Creed, and he was telling me that he used to have to go on recce's for like the scenes of the levels, and he'd go out with a camera and he'd take all this scenery, and he decided that he loved the photography that much he quit the day job, and now he's a photographer and he's got his debut book coming out, I believe October. And it ties into the love of colours. I think my love of his work, I love his colour range. It's very cyberpunk, very sci-fi, and I've been trying to replicate it a little bit myself in parts. Very much at the early stage, nowhere near as good as his work, but it's inspired certainly so. Okay, so I'll put down some of my top tips for photography, and it's for any photographers in the room, and it's maybe just a bit of insight into some of the methods that I work by. So the first one is patience, as I was saying a minute ago. Absolutely, if you're going to do anything like street photography or wildlife photography, patience is a virtue, and kind of ties into point 3 as well. Always stay 30 seconds longer than you think. If you think, oh, I'm done, I'm not going to get that moment, just give it another 30 seconds. Maybe 7-8 times out of 10 you might just get it. So yeah, the second one is work the space, the locations, look for angles. So that's kind of saying, instead of going for a conventional shot the way you see a scene first of all, maybe take a step back and look at what different angle you can get, maybe what different take you can get on it, rather than the one that people are going to get kind of 9 times out of 10. Take lots and lots of shots. So when I go out shooting for a day, probably take about 700-800 shots, and of that maybe 2 or 3 will be decent. Wow. So yeah, it's quite I am overly savage with some of my shots. Like, I am really picky in post editing, probably more than other photographers that I know, but generally some of the professional photographers I've spoken to and I've heard talks by will echo the same. They'll go out and they'll take hundreds of shots just to come away with 1 or 2 decent shots at the end of the day. So yeah, if you're going to do photography, take lots and lots and lots of shots. Try and frame the shot as much as possible in camera. Caused a bit of a debate with this one on Twitter last week actually. I asked my photography friends how much cropping they do in post editing, percentage wise roughly, and I've worked out I'm down to about 10%, but I think there's some people that were saying 40-50 and were critical of how little I was cropping, should I say.
Sorry, that's edit cropping.
Yeah, cropping. So yeah, the percentage of the picture you'll keep afterwards.
Right,
So,
got it. Okay.
yeah, some people in the early days, I won't lie. In the early days, I was maybe losing half my frame or 2/3 of my frame. Well, 1/3 of my frame, should we say?
Right.
But now I've tried to hone it down to as little as possible cropping. If I can frame it right in the camera, I'll always try to. But obviously, it's not an ideal world. Sometimes it's a little bit I have to lose around the edges, a little bit of a trim. Don't be scared to edit. It's a massive debate point. Purists might say never edit, kind of do it all in camera, get it right out of the camera. Nobody edits. I would say edit. Somewhat. Some people can overdo it, overcook it. Depends what your style of photography is. But personally, I'm never scared to edit. I'll do a little bit of lighting adjustment maybe, or I'll add a lot of contrast if any of you have seen my work. But that's about it. But then some people edit a lot. But certainly don't be scared to. And it makes me laugh because a lot of the purists say, the likes of my stepdad's an example. He's a massive Ansel Adams fan, and he argues with me constantly that Ansel Adams never edits and would never edit. But if you read into that guy's method, he would spend hours in the darkroom with red filters and all sorts, which is editing to an extent. So I'm only of the opinion if Ansel Adams was around today, he'd be all over Photoshop or Lightroom without a shadow of a doubt. If possible, shoot in RAW mode. For those of you that might not know what that means, in cameras generally there'll be two formats you can shoot in, either JPEG or RAW. The difference being JPEG will compress your images down and there'll be very little scope for editing afterwards if you get the lighting wrong or anything, whereas RAW will retain all that information with no compression, so it gives you a lot more scope to make things perfect afterwards if you don't quite get it in camera at the time. So it's very handy for that reason. Do photography for yourself, not for praise of others. This is something I was guilty of in the early days of my photography. I was doing it for likes, I was going to camera clubs, and I was always trying to please the people there and get them to say, oh yeah, you've done a good job there. Kind of realised that that's overhyped, and now I will only shoot stuff that I like, and I will only publish stuff that I like. It will be for me, for my own reasons, and if anything happens, if it happens, if it doesn't, it doesn't. So what, I love the shots and I'll look at them in 10, 20 years time and still love them, so who cares. Watch movies would be the next one. Going to sound a little odd, but it's going back to Liam Wong. He gave me this advice. I said, if you've got any advice, what would it be? And he said, watch movies, because you'll see scenes, you'll see things happen in there, and it will spark your imagination and it will give you something. And I was looking at him puzzled, and he said, right, think of a musician. They will always listen to other artists and they will say, oh, I was influenced by the Beatles, by the Stones, by this, by that, because they'll listen to that and it will feed something within them, and then they'll hear that in their work. If you're going to do visual art, you've kind of got to do the same thing with movies and TVs and stuff for that reason. So I kind of always like to have a bit of my week where I can have a proper film fest, take in a few films and spark that bit of imagination in myself. If you can work in auto or priority mode to ensure you capture the moments rather than missing them by maybe messing with your settings too much, do it. Absolutely do it. I know some of the best pros in street photography that will always shoot in auto mode, because then that way they can concentrate on the moment rather than getting the settings right. And if they're shooting raw as well, even if the auto does a bad job of it, they can kind of adjust it afterwards and it's not too much of a disaster. So yeah, I'd never shy away from using auto or priority mode like shutter or aperture priority if you need to. Just because it hasn't been done doesn't mean it can't be done. Break the mold. That's kind of the mantra that I have every morning. So sometimes I'll look at a scene and I'll think, I can't shoot it like that because nobody will shoot it like that. And then I think, well, why can't I be the innovator? Like, why can't I be the unconventional one, the first one that tries that? And I'm not scared of trying that. And you'll see some examples of my work in a minute. And there's a couple of photos from the jazz festival I did last week where I've kind of done some selective focusing stuff, where maybe the foreground's out of focus but the background's in focus, and it's kind of unconventional, but I like it and I think it works. And just as I said, because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean it can't be done. and finally just be you and enjoy yourself. That's another thing I have to remind myself of photography. It's, any art form, I guess, is massive on your personal resource. You know, you can, if you're in the middle of a project, you might be sleep deprived, you might be an absolute slave to it. What's the point if you ain't going to enjoy it? It's absolutely right. Like the last 10 days I've done the jazz festival and I've kind of forgotten what sleep is. If I didn't enjoy what I was doing, it'd be pointless. I'd drive myself crazy, so you've got to enjoy what you're doing as well. So some examples of my work. This one I took on top of the custard factory a few months back, which was quite nice as well, and I forget his name, but there's a guy who's normally here who does the bees on the roof up there. I kind of had a lovely chat with him that afternoon. It was a beautiful afternoon, and yeah, it was nice. I quite like that. That was in the Birmingham Post recently as well. I think they published that one a couple of weeks back, if I remember rightly. That's the TV magician Ben Hanlon. I did some official photography for him at the Midlands Arts Centre. Quite fortunate in the fact that he was actually a friend before we got his TV break, so I kind of blagged it that way, and we were a little less serious than we probably should have been at times, but it was a good day, and it kind of got my foot in at the Mac as well. I got to know the staff there, and I've got a few bits coming up there now off the back of it. That was a shot that I took, I think I told you about this. I went to London one day and it was a horrible day. It was piddling it down all day, terrible weather, and I came away and I felt so dejected. I think I even spoke to you that evening and you said, how did it go? And I went, crap, I've got nothing today, absolutely nothing. I got that into Lightroom and I dropped all the colours apart from the red, and I looked at it and I thought, that's a TV drama poster. I like that. The thing about that I like, and it's been well received as well, so that was my one saving grace from that day. And some days I'll go out and I'll feel negative, but if I can get one shot out of the day, I'm happy. So that was that shot for that day.
Great shot.
Yeah. This was Pride in London. I could have picked 20, 30 photos for that, but I think they're my two favourite. Because you've got the flag and this kind of diversity thing going on there as well. And within the press area as well, I managed to get a little shot of Sam Smith throwing a bit of a wave, which came out rather well, so I was quite happy with that one. This was the Donald Trump protest. Yeah. There's a few things I like about that.
There's so much in there.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a sense of humour, so all I saw at the time, believe it or not, with my eye in the viewfinder was, no one likes you, you twat. But then I see stuff in editing like this guy's face on the left, and then my eye pulls to the right and there's nope.
Yeah.
So it kind of follows the whole story.
Mr. Corbyn, where were you last night?
Yeah. Keep your hands off NHS in the background as well. Yeah, it was a pleasing day because I have got a sense of humour, and some of the boards, if you see the full range, some of the protest boards are hilarious. Completely hilarious.
Karl looks like Corbyn as well.
Yeah, he does. And he was doing a speech about 100 yards away an hour or so later, so it might well be without the glasses on, who knows. Okay, it's my little nod to Ben Wong. An insane evening. I only know it's insane because Anita told me it was insane, and if Anita reckons it's insane. I went to London at 2 hours notice because it was raining and it was forecast heavy rain, and I literally said I'm going to jump on the coach to London and I'm going to stay up all night, walk the streets of Soho in the rain because I fancy trying a little bit of what Liam's done. So I did.
Wow.
Admittedly, I forgot how interesting, shall we say, Soho is in the wee hours of the morning. Yeah.
Was that bike just there?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
No one stole it?
No.
Is it? A rental?
I actually wish, this is one of the photos I wish I could make 4D because you can't quite see in the background, but on the statue steps there was a gang of youths and they had like a massive Bluetooth boombox and they were having like a little rave. So kind of while I'm there taking a photo, I'm having a little bop about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. But yeah, I purposely went with the colour range there and I've got the reflections in as well. So yeah, I was quite happy with that shot. I probably gave myself a mild form of pneumonia that evening. But yeah, it was a good night, interesting night.
I think that would be great in a montage, like a video.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Two of my favourite street shots. So I got that one on the left on the tube, on my phone actually, because I didn't want to pull the DSLR out of the tube for clear reasons. Interesting photo actually, because at the time I'm just taking and sharing the view of the newspaper, didn't really think a great deal else about it. But the guy sat down, we have a mutual friend, and he got in touch with me afterwards. Now, in the photo, it's fairly obvious that perhaps the gentleman on the right is a football fan. He's got like a... he's got like a football-y scarf on. He was going to a West Ham game that day. Kind of knew that at the time because of the colour of the scarf and stuff. But the guy on the left who got in touch with me was a Birmingham fan who'd been playing that day. So it then gives it that narrative that they're kind of sharing the look of the newspaper in that moment, but then the second they get off the tube, they're opposition, different sides, and it gave it that extra angle.
And it's the sport pages on the back.
Yes, it is, And then the one on the right, I'm going to sound like an absolute bullshitter here, so bear with me, but I did not see her at the time of taking that photo. I don't know quite how. I was focusing on the balloons perhaps, but I didn't see her until she popped up in Lightroom afterwards.
Wow.
And it's kind of weird because she's smiling at me. She can clearly see what I'm doing. I just haven't got a clue that she's particularly there because I'm too busy. So I quite like that. It's a happy surprise, I call that.
Is that Birmingham?
Yes, by the Odeon. Down by the Odeon on Valentine's Day. And this was from the Jazz Festival the last 10 days. I picked a few of my favourites out. So it's kind of trying to do something different. There's a few photographers that did it, and I'm kind of the idea that you can always take the typical shots you'll take of a band, maybe front on or each member. I tried to do something different this festival, so I looked for some different angles. So I'm looking at the player there, and I've got his bandmate in the foreground out of focus. This one, it's a little bit typical, but it's a nice sunny day and it made for a nice mono scene, so I ran with it. That one's a little bit different. I've got the band out of focus and there's a guy in the restaurant having his dinner on the right, so that's kind of what I focused on, like he's having a look, he don't look too impressed, but he's taking it in anyway. Two very different ones, close up of the sax and the kid drummer I was fascinated by because he was, he's the most timid lad before he gets behind the kit, and then he goes in all the Keith Moon on you and insane. But he's an interesting lad. That one at Sutton Town Hall, so I've got enough of her shot to tell what's going on, but you've also got that bit of motion with her hair and the hand of her partner as well, so I quite like that one. No, there's two. So you've got a nice mono one of the singer there and the band on the right. Again, trying a little bit of a different angle, going for the little bit of the Dutch tilt with the angle a little bit. Kind of gives it that bit of perspective. I did that a lot during the festival actually with the saxes because they kind of tend to hold them up, so I kind of lined the angle with the sax, which was a bit of a recurring theme this festival. Okay, so my book. How am I doing on time? What?
You have 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. So I've released a book, doing a book launch at the end of September at the Gunmakers. In a nutshell, it's a mix of candid street photography, in colour, in black and white, encompassing narrative, humour, emotion, all that kind of stuff. But there's also text in there which tells you a little bit about me coming into the book, my background, through mental health, addiction, and it campaigns for creativity to be prescribed on the NHS, which I guess is the main takeaway I wanted to give you guys tonight. So I kind of got inspired by that because I worked for a drug service as a sort of substance abuse worker, and part of what we did was art therapy. And one moment that inspired me, just very briefly, was there was a guy in there who'd been on heroin and stuff for 50 odd years, in his 60s, 70s, stubborn old mule, absolute nightmare to work with. We gave him the outline of the programme for this detox week, and we said Wednesday afternoon we're doing art therapy, and his face dropped and he went, nah, I don't do artifying, mate, it's bullshit, I don't do none of that, it's not for me, mate, I'm streetwise, I got my street cred. No, we'll get you doing something. So I can't draw a paper, trust me on this one. So we got to the Wednesday afternoon, and all we asked him to do was get an A3 piece of paper, 2 A3 pieces of paper, load of magazines and newspapers, and make a collage or a mosaic of words, pictures. One sheet summed up life in addiction, one possible life in recovery. And all the others did it. He refused. He sat there and did a crossword like a stubborn old git. No surprises. But he watched the others and they fed back, and it was quite a powerful thing. And he came in the next morning and he brought in an A3 piece of paper and he did the most detailed sketch. And he kind of apologised to us all for not giving it a go. And then he took the floor for 45 minutes and gave us everything that this sketch meant, and kind of expressed how much it helped him. And he said he was shocked at the mosaic thing, because he said all they've done is cut out stuff and glued it on paper. How can that be art? I said, mate, you're expressing yourself. That's art in its simplest form. It doesn't matter if you're doodling, making a mosaic, putting a load of Lego together. It doesn't matter what it is. Expressing yourself creatively is as easy as that, or as complex as you want it to be. And there's a lot in that therapeutically. So yeah, that's kind of where that's coming from. And I guess the way I'd like creativity on the NHS to work would be, firstly, maybe a handbook in waiting areas that kind of has a few little self-journal things, drawing prompts, all that kind of stuff, mindful colouring, all the way through to maybe enabling community centres to put on creativity once, twice a week, and kind of enable people with that, because waiting lists for stuff like mental health at the minute are extortionate. So if there's a way of enabling people with creativity at home to do something to help themselves in the meantime, then it's got to be worth a shot. And I guess that's kind of where I'm trying to go with that. And because I've run out of time, I'll leave it there.
Unless people want to continue this conversation, I think you've opened something here, right?
I'm kind of...
Or do you want to move to questions, or do you want to keep going?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
I'm happy for you to do that, if everyone else is.
Yeah.
Questions will be good.
Yeah, questions. Let's go to questions.
Lady in the red.
Okay.
I just want to pick up on what you were saying about creativity being prescribed.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, the story you're telling about people expressing themselves, how much of it, in your opinion, do you think it's beneficial for people to be just doing the work themselves with a booklet?
Yeah. It's a question, it's a question I got asked recently. I don't suppose it's never going to solve the problem alone, standalone. But as I said, with waiting lists, it's a way of filling the interim, and it's something that we can enable people with, and they can do at no cost or burden to the NHS. And kind of once you start that creative spark with people, like the stubborn old mule in Warsaw, it's kind of endless. And he got into gardening off the back of that, and he bought mindful colouring books. He totally started expressing the creative side he never knew he had. So yeah, and I kind of made the argument with him and others that we've all got creativity in us. It's just maybe got lost along the way. And we showed it as kids with cardboard boxes that were space rockets or cars, or paintings we brought home for our mum that in my case were terrible, but it still showed that we've got that creativity in us. It's just a case of finding it again. And when we find it again, it can be quite a powerful thing to enable people with. So yeah, does that answer it? Or yeah, any of us?
A practical one. When you said about taking 800 shots and maybe finishing with 2,
Yeah.
what did you do with the other 792?
A section of them. So I have in Lightroom, you can do like a star rating 1 to 5. So at first glance through them, I'll give them a star. If it's a 3 and above, they're kept in Lightroom. 1 and 2s are deleted. And then anything that's generally a 4 or 5 will be the ones I edit and maybe publish. And the 3s will kind of sit there, and I'll maybe look at them at a later point if I've not been out shooting, or I'm uninspired, or I think there's something I could maybe do with them. So yeah, generally that.
And And the ones that are like 1, 2 star, do you get rid of them?
Yeah, absolutely. Straight
You
to the
delete
side.
them
Yeah,
because.
yeah.
And what? In terms of your camera, then, how much can it hold? I mean, do you then move them off the camera straight
Yes.
away?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll come. The SD card will come out of the camera. We'll go into Lightroom. That will whiz it into the cloud,
Right.
and then the SD card will get wiped and ready to go again.
Right. Okay.
So it's all kind of in cloud, and every sort of 6 weeks I'll do a hard backup as well on an external hard drive where I'll download them all off the cloud, the new ones added, and they'll be backed up on a hard drive in case technology fails us at some point.
Thank you.
Related to this question, I love to take pictures and I've noticed that out of 700 pictures, possibly 2 or 3 are nice.
Yeah.
So if I love the process of taking a picture, I really struggle choosing them.
Okay,
Is there
that's a
any
good
trick?
problem to have.
Yeah. Is
It's a
there
good
any
problem
secret to
I think, as I sort of said earlier, if it gives me a few questions or I look at it and I feel something, then generally that'll kind of be it. Other than that, there's no rule. It's on what you like, what you feel is good, what you want to present. There's not really any golden rule, maybe, unless you want to go into the technicalities of like, does this one meet the rule of thirds or the leading lines? Is everything in focus? But again, it's all open for your own interpretation, I guess. So yeah.
How have you pitched your ideas for NHS?
I haven't yet. I've done a bit within the addiction service I worked for, so there's some stuff that I've left behind there as a legacy, like worksheets and booklets, and I'm kind of still in conversation with a few of them because some of them are on like a 2-pay from the NHS, so there's channels we can go through. But at the moment, I've thrown it out as an idea in the book, and I'm kind of then looking to run with it and gain a bit of momentum, and that's happening on a kind of daily basis. It's picking up more. So yeah, it's kind of at the very early point at the moment.
Well,
Yeah.
I run into a bit of a string asking like this because creativity implies originality.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to describe because nothing chases appeal.
It is.
From one size fits all.
Absolutely.
Diagnosed and
And I guess if it,
However, sorry, can I just butt in and say that the NHS actually prescribe books as well, doesn't it?
yeah.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily one size fits all. You do go outside the box and sometimes prescribe things.
So like when I was saying about booklet waiting areas, I guess if some power to be came to me now and said design that, give it us, it would encompass a whole range of creativity. So you'd have mindful colouring pages, you'd have writing prompts, drawing prompts, journal prompts. It's looking at different things, and it's a little bit of, one size doesn't fit all. So if you're going to put a session together or something together, you've got to give people options and a bit of a menu, and ultimately, hopefully, they'd find that little bit of creativity that they like, and then they'd kind of run with that.
Just wonder if it's something that should be built outside the NHS as a community activity, grassroots. like-
Yeah, I think it's. Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
It's only that health and social care suddenly
Yeah.
realise that
Really, yeah.
creativity and the arts is good for health and well-being.
Absolutely.
Who now?
Yeah.
Maybe that's
Well-
where you'd be better pitching it than.
Yeah. To be fair, I'm one of those with the creativity. When I got into like addiction recovery, I didn't necessarily think of that as an answer, and it's one of the things they did with me. They kind of taught me journaling and try this and try that, and that kind of helped me a lot early days because it helped me to maybe express feelings that I'd buried for decades. So yeah.
One more question. Yes, lady in the red dress again. Go for it. Okay.
Any of you can speak to me afterwards as well if you want, by the way. I'm not shooting off anywhere, so any questions that get asked on me.
Absolutely. And Karl I'll get the slides shared.
Yeah,
with
absolutely. Yeah, I'll send them over
everyone.
later on.
If you have tips, advice around anything that Karl's talked about, especially around creativity and its application in health and social care.
And there's all the
roots.
following details.
Oh, there you go. Very good. Very pleased. That's good.
Yeah.
Karl, I thought that was excellent. I think that everyone should show Karl appreciation. as you know, I'm